bringing in Megan Samford, and Megan is VP, Chief Product Security Officer for Energy Management at Schneider Electric, and she is a security executive with a focus in industrial control systems security, critical infrastructure protection, and risk analysis. In her role at Schneider Electric, Megan is responsible for driving the product security strategy and program for Schneider Electric's energy management business. And taking her role at Schneider Electric, Megan became, and this is my favorite part of your bio, I have to admit, that she became the first female CPSO for a major industrial without first being a CISO, and has received recognition for this achievement in the industrial control systems security industry. So Megan, thank you so much. And as one who has been on the inside with a city, a municipality, as we went through a massive ransomware incident, there are a lot of not for public, not for work comments that get said. There's a lot of, well, there goes that backup plan idea. And so looking forward to your presentation conversation. A reminder to everyone that there are the questions, the chat, and with that, ICS for ICS. Megan, take it away.
Awesome, thank you, Liz. That was a tremendous introduction, one that I probably don't feel like I absolutely deserve, but Liz, I will give you a shout out because I've been popping in and out today, and I mean the composure, the grace, you know, the light humor, the good personality, a good MC and moderator like you kind of make the day, you make things flow. So if no one has told you yet, great job, and thanks for having me here today. I really appreciate the time to talk about this topic. It's obviously something that people that know me know that I'm fairly passionate about, but ICS for ICS stands for Incident Command System for Industrial Control Systems. And of course, you know, it's a little bit of a pun, a little bit of play on words there, but this whole idea started maybe a year and a half ago, I guess. I was having a phone conversation with Dale Peterson. He's just a tremendous personality in the ICS community. I was talking to him about, you know, I have this idea. I don't know that it's a great idea, but I came from an emergency management background. I was trained in a variety of NIMS, incident command system, you know, philosophies that fall under the national response framework many years ago. I was kind of an OG in Homeland Security, and that I kind of started from the very base level, ground up, kind of lowest person on the totem pole in the Virginia governor's office. And I learned a lot of different trainings, a lot of different methodologies for response planning, Homeland Security policy, the traditional guns, guards, and gates. And then when I switched over to cyber, when I joined General Electric to do product security incident response for them, vuln handling and disclosure, all of that cool stuff, I said, you know, is there a way that these two worlds could marry one another? So to kind of sum up who I am, I'm a person that is passionate about Homeland Security. I'm a person that's passionate about risk modeling, risk analysis, and really the intersection of where traditional Homeland Security, critical infrastructure protection, and emergency management can come together, and kind of we can live in the best of both worlds, and I think it's possible. And shout out to the folks at CISA, Rick Driggers, Mark Bristow, Kim Zola, Elka Soberai, you rock. You've been supporting me on this, so I'm trying to give credit where credit is due, and let's go ahead and get this show on the road. So we won't spend too much time here, but as Liz was stating, I am Megan Samford. I am the Vice President, Chief Product Security Officer for the energy management business within Schneider Electric, which, you know, if you look at this concept and you look at how Schneider is a global company with, you know, especially large footprints in North America and many different countries, Schneider has been very supportive of me and is definitely investigating this concept as we're moving through it with the community. and the ISA Global Cybersecurity Alliance as well, which I'm going to touch on in a second. And Liz, feel free to interrupt me, kind of stop if something's not clear or it's not making sense, or you think that, you know, it's an area that the audience just, you know, may want to double click on to get a little bit more detail or context if I'm glazing over something, because I've talked about this so many times now. But
No,
we'll start
absolutely.
off.
You're on a roll. I'm just letting you go.
Thank you. I think that everyone that does these types of presentations, if you don't feel nervous about the subject matter, you know, if it's something that you're especially passionate about, I think there's always a little bit amount of nervousness in that you feel like you'll understate one thing or overstate another, or the message won't come across. So appreciate the feedback, questions in between. That's why I'm here. But we'll start off with just kind of the why, the problem statement. So I'm a storyteller. I like to tell stories, and these bullet points here are just observations that I've generally had from working in the industry now for close to 15 years. And that's the way that response plans are written today for cyber, is that they're based on what people know, and they're based on their comfort level, and they're falling back on their past experiences, which is absolutely normal. It's absolutely what you would expect anyone to do. But they are based on traditional IT response planning. And with that, it's focused on tactical actions that need to occur within the minutes, hours, and days that follow the investigation of a potential breach. And they are designed to mitigate harm to the organization, traditional DFIR, gathering evidence, determining what internal and external notifications, especially regulatory, may be necessary. Within that, though, these plans have difficulty scaling outside of the organization because they are custom built around the common language that's used within that company, the company culture, what the different response teams are called, the roles, unique team names. They have individuals' names in there. If they're smart, they kind of have the rapid recall list in the back of the plan, because that's something that's going to, you know, hopefully change out or be updated every few months as people come and go, or positions are added, or whatever, right? Some plans do have that, but I'll be really honest with you. I've seen a response or two, and if you've worked IT responses, maybe you'll kind of get a little bit of a laugh out of this, but how many times has, you know, someone come into a response, and it's essentially one poor SOC director that is tasked with standing up a call with about 50 executives on the call, and maybe 10 or 15 people that are actually hands-on keyboard working the response to get information. And this one person has to stand up the call. They have to be held accountable to the questions that executives and other people that want information, they want it yesterday. They're asking, legals on the call, comms is on the call. High stress. They're trying to take notes. They're trying to get their stuff together. They're trying to form what I would call an incident action plan, and they're directing resources. So I mean, just an insane amount of pressure and responsibility, often consolidated into one, maybe a handful of people. And quite frankly, it doesn't scale well, and it's certainly in many cases is not interoperable with other partner organizations, federal government, their customers. It's not built to scale. It is built to meet the specific need of the organization at hand and get them through that response as quickly as possible. And I will say the last bullet here, what I've only seen maybe once or twice within organizations is the ability for these resources to be tracked throughout the duration of the response, so that at the end of the responses, you have an idea of what did this response cost me. If you were to look at the ICS example of a fully loaded headcount hour for an engineer, that's generally, you know, 250 to 350 US dollars per hour for that engineer. So if you have 50 to 60 engineers working a response, or cyber folks, or lawyers, or comms, or whatever, this can quickly add up over time, and I just don't see many orgs tracking that cost to them. But I think that it is significant if you want to understand where's your money going, where are you spending the most time, and how would you want to shore up those SLAs in the future. So I'll pause, Liz, to see if you have any questions around the problem, or if you've seen similar things yourself.
No, I've having, again, being in the trenches and watching as stuff goes sideways and getting everyone from the same playbook when the playbook is actually there, your experience is invaluable.
Well, thank you. I'll go ahead then. So what is needed? So again, this was kind of the watershed moment for me and this idea, and where I had the courage. It was it took a lot for me to get up on the S4 stage. I think there's like 600 or 700 people there in Miami. If you've never spoken at S4, do it. It's an awesome learning experience. After you do it, I think that you'll feel like you have the courage to kind of speak anywhere. It was a good thing for me personally. But Dale Peterson really was an awesome champion and kind of highlighting this issue. But you see kind of the charter here, in that in its most basic form, the private sector is lacking a way to be interoperable in the way that it does response planning, in the way that it provides mutual aid kind of company to company or company to customer, or multi-party response, where it could be quite a few vendors in a customer environment, and all of us would need to come together to support a common customer. And then, kind of the big elephant in the room, in that if there was ever a large scale attack on the grid, or something, a supply chain, rising to that national level, we would want to be able to bring all of our resources to bear to support local, state, and federal governments through, every state has a state EOC. It's often referred to as a multi-agency coordination center, a MAC. I've spent a good amount of times in MACs before. We would want to be able to have a common language with them, right? And I'm not suggesting that anyone go out and rip up all your response plans, your 200-page documents or anything like that. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. I'm saying keep your plans, but at the very top of these plans, let's have a structure that all of us can get behind and begin to use common language to support one another, so that we're not trying to hand out business cards and shake hands during an emergency. We in some way have a common framework and structure that, by the way, has existed since the 1970s. Basically, National Incident Management System has been around. It works. We could use this, and it's a good starting point. And yes, I'm sure that we'll stumble a few times, and we're all learning, and we all require training, but I really think that this could work. And so I'm excited to say that right now we have over 50 global volunteers getting behind the effort. I can tell you that the electric sector is very interested in adopting this. They have already made great strides through programs they have, like CMA, which stands for Cyber Mutual Aid. You can see how this naturally dovetails into that effort. It's also being sponsored and officially taken up through the ISA Global Cybersecurity Alliance, Schneider Electric, Rockwell Automation, Clarity, Dragos, a number of very prominent, strong companies in this space are members, and they were founders of the ISA GCA. They're behind this as well, kind of speaking from the private sector standpoint. CISA has been tremendous in this. They have said, whatever you need, like, let's make it happen. Let's have the conversation. They have definitely come to the table with resources in a strong way. And we're working on some initial efforts right now around credentialing that I'm going to speak to in a few minutes. Sorry, just checking my time. And lastly, again, this is just about figuring out together as a community how we want to form and do this, and everything is on the table. It's not, it's not kind of a rigid thing where it has to be this way or no way or anything like that. So I'll kind of pause for questions. Or
Well, and I think you've truly highlighted one of the critical functions, because a lot of the you know how to reach, maybe you know how to coordinate with one aspect of the community when something, again, when something's going sideways, or even preparing, and like the lessons learned. One of the stories we had in the airport world was kind of the lesson learned of, you don't put your operations, like emergency response center, perhaps in the middle of the airport, because what if the emergency is happening at baggage claim? And suddenly you've now cut off those communication channels, the resources. But those lessons learned and building that communication, that learning network, have you found a lot of the, state and local, both companies providing those resources at that level or operating at that level, as well as the local governments are quick to embrace, or is it taking a little bit more of a wind up?
Yeah, so the feedback that we've gotten has definitely been that they embrace it. And there are certain mechanisms where companies can hook into response structures today. Primarily, we'll take the grid example. If a company was a significant critical infrastructure and it needed to be prioritized for rapid restoration of energy, that company, their leadership is normally already on the radar of the major energy providers. Say here in Virginia, we have Dominion Energy, terrific company. They are right there hooked into the emergency response structure, and they support what is known as Emergency Support Function 12, which is dedicated to energy and rapid restoration of critical infrastructures. Because one thing that we learned in emergency management, I mean, you take the horrible case of Hurricane Katrina. That incident and disaster was in and of itself just a horrific response challenge, the difficulties, the suffering, everything that came out of that. But what happened in Katrina was that the supply chains failed. And so when supply chains fail, you have disasters that become catastrophes because you can't move food and pharma and other things that human beings need in order to take care of themselves directly following a disaster. And so hooking into this process will hopefully speed along and make it so we understand supply chains and those unique supply chain nodes in a more thoughtful way, so that we are able to better support local, state, and the federal government, because FEMA can't do everything, and DHS cannot be expected to do everything either. And so I think that in my mind, that's really in my heart a big driver behind me doing this. And I do this in many ways on my own private time. I'm not making a dime off of this. This isn't, some idea that I want to sell or anything like that. This is truly just, I really think that this can be done. So my heart is behind it in doing it. And any company that wants to adapt and at least learn this, like that's a start for me. That's a win. And that's what keeps me going in this.
And just because I'm going to keep prodding you to do this, because it's the promotional aspect is always the hardest. Let's one more time for those in the back. What are some good places that they can, if people are hearing the message thinking, oh, I need to engage either on an individual, or this is a great initiative I have resources, stuff. How can they find out more and really plug in to what you're doing?
Sure. So the last slide of this deck, I do have some resources, but I would say if you just Google National Incident Management System training, you can take the introductory courses, which are totally free. They're online, and you can get your initial certifications in ICS 700 and 800. And then they're in-person classes if you're interested in kind of taking it to the next level, to become an incident commander or a planning section chief. And you'll know what I mean by these terms in a few slides. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but there are in-person classes for ICS 300 and then 400 for expanding incidents. So
I was
I'll
saying, no, go ahead. And if there are reflective vests, sign me up for one of those because those are fun.
I would love to. I will definitely do it. So what is Incident Command System? I probably got a little bit ahead of myself, but as I mentioned a few minutes ago, it stemmed from lessons learned from wildfire response in the 1970s in California, where you can imagine multiple different jurisdictions, fire departments. I'm sure the federal government was brought in to provide support. They had to figure out how to talk to one another. And during this time, they were using 10 code systems, right? Like a 1040 or 1080 or, 522 or whatever, right? That is not conducive to organizations that don't know each other on a first name basis being able to work together. So ICS was really built to address non-standard terminology, the lack of that common language, surge capacity, meaning maybe I only have 20 people in my volunteer fire department, but I'm going to need to bring in or request mutual aid from other maybe fire departments around my area, bring them in, and they should be able to hook into my structure, and we work together, pretty quickly within a response time frame. And then the last piece here was around non-standard response doctrines. So again, plans were complex, they were non-modular, and they really weren't easy to understand unto themselves. And it normally takes a lot of time to be trained on a plan. Sorry, my 5-year-old is coming in here. I absolutely knew that was going to happen. So he just got off the school bus. He just started kindergarten. It's a very exciting time.
It
So
is. And he needs some ICS Village and Scythe swag as well. So we'll give him
he would love it.
co-present credit on the video later.
He would love it. So I'm gonna go ahead here. So this is actually, I'm gonna give you kind of a crash course on incident command system. So at the top here, we have what's called the command staff, and you have an incident commander or you have unified command. So the incident commander is the person that, quite frankly, in many cases, they could be the first person to show up on an incident. If I'm going down the road and I come across a car accident, if I can safely stop and render help until the fire department or the police or whomever, I can call 911 until someone else can get there. Guess what? I'm the incident commander until I'm relieved of that duty. So it can be the lowest person on the totem pole. It can be the lady or the guy that shows up at the scene. You are the IC until you are relieved of duty by someone that is deemed to be bringing the most resources to bear. So that's how I figured that out in the past, is who should be the IC. There may be lots of important people sitting around the table, but ultimately your incident commander is the person that has to bring the most resources to bear or has the biggest stake in the game when they are conducting a response for an organization. So that's your IC. In some cases, you may have unified command, which would be maybe a cyber incident commander together with a physical incident commander. If it's, a horrible situation where there's been a cyber attack that has had kinetic impact, right? Where there's actual, physical impact to an environment, a plant line going down, or, you wouldn't want it. We don't even want to think about it, but, something blowing up. That would be an example where I think unified command could come into play. The incident commander defines objectives that need to be accomplished during the incident. And those objectives go out in range for operational periods. This is a very big concept in that operational periods are, we need to accomplish these 4 things within the next 8, 10, or 12 hours, basically. And that defines when you have one incident commander performing that, and then they can be relieved of their duty, and another person, there's a change of command, change of leadership, that other person comes in. And that happens for all positions, because I can say honestly, many cyber incidents that I've seen, you end up in a position where people are working 16, 18, 20 hours, and that's not sustainable. That's not healthy for the individual, and that's not ultimately healthy for the people running response, because response fatigue is very real. It can lead to horrible side effects like PTSD, especially when there are life safety implications on the line. So if you ever talk to me or get my opinion, operational periods is something that you need to absolutely follow. Coming down to, and by the way, the command staff always includes people from legal, comms, kind of the big decision makers in the room that have to come together. They're all part of that top square right there. Coming down, operations, they carry out the strategy that is set forth by incident command. They're kind of the hands-on keyboard people. Planning, they support activities for the incident. Long range, they do demobilization planning. If you had kind of an intel section, they would be within planning. I have helped and supported as planning section chief in some responses. I love it. Basically, you're drafting the incident action plans, you're taking the notes on the call, you're sending it out, you're kind of air traffic controller for the incident. It's a pretty cool role. The next one is logistics. Logistics supports command and operations with people, supplies, equipment. I often call it people, money, stuff, like whatever you need to support that incident, they're there. And then last but not least is admin and finance. So they're going to be doing that time tracking that I talked about in the beginning of the presentation, processing expense reports. They're also going to understand regulatory requirements and proper notification. If there are government agencies you need to notify what's going on or anything like that, those people got your back. So this is a current snapshot of where we are at in applying incident command system for industrial control systems. So at the top, again, I'll run through this quickly. You have unified command structure, you have a public information officer, you have legal counsel, always have a safety officer on site as well. That's pretty standard for any response. It's good practice. Operations section chief, and these positions here were ones that we worked with that large group of global volunteers. So over 50 people have contributed to saying, this is a good initial first pass for what you would need to successfully start and form response for a cyber incident impacting industrial control systems. So you see positions that many of you all are going to be familiar with, or should I say capabilities, malware, reverse engineering, post-forensic analysis, ICS systems analysis. These are going to be kind of the bare standard positions that you need. And what's kind of cool is that you can organize each of these capabilities into branches, divisions, groups, strike teams, task force, as well as just single resources if you're not running an incident that's very big. But the important thing is that you can scale with different resources as you need to. And some teams may need to be larger than others, but this is a scalable org chart. It's meant to be able to expand and contract as necessary. So lots of good things going on here. Big effort right here, credentialing. So we are looking for volunteers right now with Department of Homeland Security from within the private sector or within government, it doesn't matter, to put themselves forth to potentially be credentialed in these roles, meaning you could show up on site somewhere and say, hey, I am a credentialed planning section chief for cyber. I am a credentialed incident commander. I have run 5 incidents in my past. We're working through what the requirements would be, but definitely reach out afterwards if you're interested in that. I know we're getting short on time, so I'm trying to go through it, but these are just tips to get you started. Here is my talk from S4. It's like a 45-minute presentation. I go into these concepts in a bit more detail there. The benefit of this talk, though, is that you have the updated view, so definitely go back and reference this one once it's posted on ICS Village. The free training I was talking about, that's the link. Just other good kind of tips is start small and scale. Start with just assigning people the common language roles like planning section chief, ops section chief, within your command structure. That way, if something happened and you need it to kind of connect in with other parties or the government, you at least have that, right? Utilize the basic plan and have appendices and annexes. I'm so big on this. So I have come across some monstrous plans in the past, and I'm just like, man, like, what's the likelihood of somebody reading this 200-page plan? And so what you can do, and what NIMS will teach you, is that you can have like a 10-page basic plan that just says, this is the purpose of the document, this is who has the authority to execute and start the document, right? Who has legal authority to execute this plan, the different teams that are involved, and what your expectation is of those teams that need to come to the table and what they would be doing. And from there, you build comms appendices, you build hazard-specific annexes for ransomware or targeted malware or pandemic influenza. You can build all of these other annexes to scale as your organization completes different response planning efforts based on priority and the threats that are impacting that organization. So that is really it, Liz. Again, folks, you want to get involved, email me. That's my email. You can reach me. I will contact you back. I may have a number of folks reaching out, so if I don't get back to you right away, don't think ill of me. I promise. I do want to talk to you. I do want you to reach out, and I will be responsive. So, whew, that was it.
Oh, excellent, and excellent information provided. Again, it was fascinating to watch from the kind of peanut, or I guess from the middle of the bullpen as stuff unfolded, how many different ways you had to try to coordinate and identify who are our resources, who are our contacts. Some easy and, oh, okay, well, of course we need to do this, but not doing that. And so to know that you've been coordinating and creating that common language and that common plan that's easily accessible, and like the communication being the key. So thank you, and look forward and highly encourage everyone to both find that. We will have both the slides linked as well, kind of a gentle nudge for Megan to send them to us and authorize us to share. But if nothing else, the video will be available on ICS Village YouTube channel. And we don't have any immediate questions, which means you did a fantastic job at going through this. And thanks to your co-presenter, very excited for the end of their day and to share all about kindergarten with you. So that's great.
Yes. Well, we'll check and see how kindergarten day went. Hopefully he didn't get in trouble today. So.
No, well, thank you.
It was awesome.
Well, thank you for joining us.